Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories. Pressure grows to extend the pause in fighting between Israel and Hamas as 69 hostages and 150 Palestinians are released. Our other headlines: more aid flows into Gaza, but the World Health Organization warns more people are at risk from dying of disease than bombings. Ensuring continued support for Ukraine is firmly in focus as NATO foreign ministers meet in Brussels. And whose marbles are these anyway? Britain's Prime Minister snubs his Greek counterpart in a row over the Parthenon marbles. Israel and Hamas appear to be abiding by the truce for another day in Gaza after the four-day pause in fighting was extended by 48 hours to allow more hostages to be freed. So far, Hamas has released 69 women and children, Israelis and foreign nationals, as part of the original agreement. In exchange, 150 Palestinians, all women and teenagers, have been freed from Israeli prisons. Israel says the truce could extend further as long as Hamas continues to release at least 10 hostages a day. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Akram Al-Satari, who's in Gaza. Akram, what is Hamas saying about this extension or possible extension of the truce deal?
Even before the official announcement of that 2 days extension, Hamas stated, one of the Hamas leaders, Khalil Hayya, stated that Hamas is ready for more extensions according to the terms and conditions laid and dictated by the Palestinian resistance. Hamas said from its part, they're going to continue to support that ceasefire as long as the occupation, according to their words, respects that ceasefire. They have been working throughout the days to make sure that they can secure the number of prisoners to be released, and they have been successfully doing that from different parts of the Gaza Strip. Some of those parts were under the control of the Israeli forces, and they managed to release the prisoners from those areas, and they managed also to march in defiance with their fighters in the streets of Gaza that was supposed to be under the control of the Israeli army. They said also they are willing to continue, and they're willing to go as far as it takes for the sake of realizing the national aspiration of the Palestinians, which means the release of the Palestinian prisoners, and that they're ready to discuss the fate of other categories. And in that term, other categories, they're talking about the soldiers who are still held captive by Hamas, and they said they're willing to negotiate, and it looks like they are already negotiating by the support of Qatar and Egypt for the sake of developing a swap deal that includes the soldier. It looks like many negotiations are taking place, deep negotiations, and it looks like they are already achieving something in that particular term. As for the truce itself, Hamas military spokesperson made a statement just a few minutes from now saying that the Israeli occupation violated the terms of the truce, and that Hamas military wing had to deal with that violation, and that things are continuing and the truce will be observed as long as the occupation observes it.
The truce may be observed, but more IDF raids in the West Bank.
Yes, indeed, more IDF raids in the West Bank. That has been the case and the routine for the last few years. IDF sees in the West Bank as a potential explosive front that might erupt anytime soon, and they have been acting in that particular area. They say that they've been acting according to intelligence information. They have been trying to stop ticking bombs in the areas of the West Bank. They have been trying to attack the stronghold of the Palestinian resistance in the West Bank. They have attacked Jenin, they have attacked Nablus, Bethlehem and Yatta, and they seem to be attacking in a way that indicates they are willing to thwart potential threats to the Israeli security according to their statements. So the situation continues to be very dire in the West Bank, and the Palestinian Authority also voiced its concern over the ongoing arrests and raids in the West Bank. Around 3,000 Palestinians were arrested, and many more are now arrested by Israel, and there seems to be continuum in the military operations in the West Bank, taking more lives and destroying more infrastructures.
Akram, thank you for that. Our correspondent Akram Al-Satari in Gaza. Let's get the view now from Israel and talk to our correspondent Sarah Coates, watching events for us from Tel Aviv. Sarah, so hostages released last night and more expected today as part of this new truce extension.
Yeah, hi, Jamie. Well, look, these 11 people that were released last night, they're back here in Israel and are being treated in hospital. Now, doctors treating these patients say they will receive ongoing psychological help as needed, while the director of the children's department at Ichilov Hospital right here in Tel Aviv says that they are really trying to treat these people for nutrition. Now, they have met with their families, extremely joyous reunions after such a long time away. But as you did mention, Israel is now preparing to receive this next batch of hostages. It does have that list of people that Hamas is willing to hand over. We can expect this in the coming hours. Now, it's also important to add that Israel says that there are still 180 or so people being held inside the Gaza Strip. 9 of those are children. And there is some worrying news coming in about the youngest captive. That is a 10-month-old baby. His name is Kafir Bibas. And according to the IDF, Hamas says that this child has now been handed to another Palestinian faction inside the Gaza Strip. It is unclear as to which faction this actually is. And this baby has reportedly been transferred down to the south to Khan Yunis. So, of course, this is extremely worrying for the people who love this child. They held a press conference here in Tel Aviv just a short while ago, appealing for more help to bring him home.
And what happens after these 2 days? I mean, what's the feeling there about a possible extension to this pause in fighting?
Well, look, Jamie, we have been hearing from the IDF, from the Israeli military establishment, the Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. He continues to say that after this, that fighting will continue with intensity. The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, he's been saying the same thing. He visited troops over the last few days and said that this war will continue. The goals will continue. That's to bring these hostages back and also to defeat Hamas, to ensure something like this never happens again. Now, our other reporter down inside the Gaza Strip did mention this meeting that's happening right now in Qatar. Israel's Mossad director is part of that meeting. The CIA director, Bill Burns, also meeting with Qatar's prime minister. And look, they are really pushing for this extension to try and bring more hostages back. And this will also be the message from the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, when he hits the ground here in Tel Aviv over the next few days. He will also be pushing for an extension to try and secure the release of more of these captives, also to provide more humanitarian aid into the Strip at a time when supplies are running drastically low. Jamie.
Sarah, thank you for that. Our correspondent Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv. Well, the extension of this truce would allow further humanitarian aid into Gaza, but the World Health Organization is warning that more people are at risk of dying from disease than bombings if the enclave's health system is not repaired. Western powers are looking to increase aid efforts, and a French ship has docked in Egypt to be used as a hospital. Our correspondent Yasser Hakim is near the Rafah border crossing. Yasser, what will the truce extension mean for aid efforts and aid deliveries?
Yes, obviously it will very much help in increasing the amount of aid that goes into Gaza because obviously there's a lull in violence, so the trucks can easily pass through and reach Gaza without having to face any kind of attacks. What we are seeing now, that an average of 50 to 60 trucks per day used to enter Gaza from the Rafah border crossing before the truce. During the truce, we're talking about 200. trucks per day, carrying water, food, medical equipment, medicine, tents, and so forth. And these are over 200 a day. Still, according to the UNRWA, is an extremely low number. If you just in context, before the war started, the border crossing used to send or open the doors for 500 trucks per day to enter into Gaza for commodities, goods, and so forth for the Palestinians in Gaza. Now we're talking about 200, still too low, especially that we're in a time of war where they need more medical equipment. The countries like France, like you said, has just docked a hospital ship. Qatar has also sent flights. The US has sent 3 flights carrying 8 flights. The ships, there were others from the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, and they were carrying also field hospitals with Saudi Arabia, and Jordan was the first country actually to deploy field hospitals inside Gaza before the truce, during the fighting. So Jordan was the first to take that step, and it happened during the fighting in Khan Yunis, in the southern part of Gaza. And now there are more field hospitals going into Gaza during the truce on a daily basis by the trucks. The total amount of medical aid, as we've been told by Egyptian officials here, is about 8,583 tons of medical aid and medical equipment, 11,500 tons of food and water, and then there's other form of aid in water and food and everything, much more. As we understand, it's over 15,000 tons. 75 to 80% are Egyptian, are coming from Egypt. The rest is from the international community. Egypt sends its food and all the aid using trucks from Cairo and other cities, while the international community sends through flights and the ships at Al Arish airport behind us, and also at Al Arish seaport a few kilometers away. And it all gathers here in Al Arish city where we are, and is then transported by trucks into the Rafah border crossing around 40 kilometers from Al Arish city. So Egypt and Qatar are continuing their efforts to extend the truce, hoping that this will allow even more aid to go into the Palestinian territories or Gaza, especially medical aid. We've been told, we met with the health minister of Palestine, and she said out of 35 hospitals, only 4 remain in Gaza. Those 4 are serving 2.3 million people. So they badly need the field hospitals, they badly need the medical aid as well as the rest type of aid. Back to you.
Yasser, thank you for that. Our correspondent Yasser Hakim near the Rafah border crossing. China is hosting a huge international expo focused on supply chain. 5 industries are in the spotlight at the CISE: smart vehicles, clean energy, digital technology, agriculture and health. Our correspondent Huang Fei reports.
China's Premier Li Qiang kicked off the event with a renewed commitment to open market access.
安全稳定是实现发展的
Supply chain security and stability are the foundation of development. This requires us to promote cooperation with mutual respect and equal treatment, strengthen key industrial chains, and coordinate resources globally. We must avoid arbitrary interference in market behavior, support enterprises in their analysis and risk response, and strive to reduce factors of uncertainty and instability.
Over 500 companies are joining the display. Major companies like Tesla, Qualcomm, and ExxonMobil show a strong American interest, surpassing organizers' initial expectations. Among international participants, a notable 36% represent the United States and Europe.
We are mainly active in the renewable energy business, solar, energy storage, batteries, charging infrastructure for EVs. And China is leading in all these markets, and that's the reason why we are here, to find out the latest news, the trends. It's because what's going on in China will affect the world.
The expo is seen as Beijing's answer to Washington's de-risking approach. Some multinationals are exploring supply chain relocations to avoid fallouts of the China-U.S. tech rivalry. The World Trade Organization recently downgraded its 2023 forecast for global trade in goods from 1.7% to a mere 0.8%. With a high-profile event, China is positioning itself as a champion of globalization.
China accounted for nearly a third of the world's manufacturing output in 2022 and continues to play a key role in global economic recovery. The expo is both a demonstration of China's own supply chain resilience and a bid for new connections. Industry leaders are expected to delve into critical issues facing global supply chains today and are using this timely platform to shore up alliances amid changing trade dynamics. Huang Fei, CGTN, Beijing.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, drying reservoirs and water rationing. Why purified wastewater could hold the key to Tunisia's problems.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Great unicorn companies. Make sense of it all with global business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us.
And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more...
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. Pressure grows to extend the pause in fighting between Israel and Hamas as 69 hostages and 150 Palestinians are released. Our other headlines: more aid flows into Gaza, but the World Health Organization warns more people are at risk of dying from disease than bombings. Well, the conflict in Ukraine and ensuring continued support is in focus as NATO foreign ministers meet in Brussels. The United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken is expected to reaffirm Washington's backing despite division among lawmakers at home over funding and U.S. involvement in finding a solution to the Israel-Hamas conflict. Let's talk to our correspondent Alex Cadier in Brussels. Alex, NATO Secretary General has sent a strong message to allies over support for Ukraine.
Yeah, the message from Jens Stoltenberg was clear, is that Ukraine fatigue, that elephant in the room at this meeting, and increasingly a meeting since the situation in the Middle East started, was that Ukraine fatigue will not be an issue. He said that he was confident that allies would continue to garner support for Ukraine. He said it was an issue of utmost importance for the NATO alliance, and he spoke to reporters just a few moments ago. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
It's our obligation to ensure that we provide Ukraine with the weapons they need, because it will be a tragedy for Ukrainians if President Putin wins, but it will also be dangerous for us.
So clearly a tragedy for NATO and a challenge for NATO if Russia were to win this conflict, and that's certainly one of the big concerns. And Anthony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, will not be the only one rallying support. David Cameron is back in Brussels, and he released a statement, the Foreign Office releasing a statement saying he was also going to try and rally support from NATO allies to support Ukraine. Now, the reality on the ground is that the United States has the Republican Party blocking more aid from the US, and Viktor Orban of Hungary is blocking more aid coming from the EU. But that is just at that supranational level, these big organizations. Individual EU countries are still ramping up their support. The US will still have support for a while still, and the UK, as I just said, rallying that support as well. So it is very much the elephant in the room, very much a concern about Ukraine fatigue, but the message from Jens Stoltenberg, from the US, from the UK, from other NATO allies is that that support is not going anywhere, Jamie.
Alex, back to you later in the day. For the moment, thank you. Our correspondent Alex Cadier in Brussels. Now, who owns one of the great treasures of the British Museum? The UK and Greece have been plunged into a diplomatic row over the long-disputed ancient Parthenon sculptures which were taken from Greece in the early 19th century. The Greek Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, cut short his visit to London after the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, cancelled their planned talks. Our correspondent, Paul Hawkins, reports.
Rishi Sunak was supposed to host a meeting with the Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, but Sunak cancelled that meeting after Mitsotakis brought up the sensitive subject of the Elgin marbles, as they're known in the UK, or the Parthenon sculptures, as they're known in Greece, half of which were taken by Britain when Greece was occupied by the Ottoman Empire. A British diplomat, Lord Elgin, brought them back to London, where they've remained in the British Museum since 1832, and ever since then Greece has always wanted them back. Now, in a TV interview on Sunday morning, Kyriakos Mitsotakis said that having half the sculptures in Greece and half the sculptures in the UK was a bit like cutting the Mona Lisa in half and then putting one half in Paris and one half in the UK. He said they were essentially stolen, but called for a partnership with the British Museum so people could appreciate the works in their original setting. Now, the British government's official position has been that the Elgin marbles, as they're known here, should never be returned to Greece, and that they should be kept here because under the British Museum Act 1963 they cannot be taken out of the museum, and in fact that's the safest place they should be. Although recently there was a case of several items being stolen from the British Museum over a number of years. Greece's position has always been that they should be returned to the country from where they were taken. Mitsotakis said he was disappointed by the cancellation of the meeting, which was supposed to also include discussions about Ukraine, about the situation in Gaza, about climate change and about the migration crisis. Number 10 says a meeting with the Deputy PM was offered instead, but Greece declined that meeting. Awkward for the UK government, especially since Kyriakos Mitsotakis was already in the UK. He met with the leader of Britain's official opposition Labour Party on Monday, and they said that they would never stand in the way of a loan agreement between the British Museum and Greece, and they called Rishi Sunak's decision to cancel the meeting pathetic.
Now, like many countries battling water scarcity in the Middle East and North Africa, Tunisia's reservoirs are on the verge of running dry. But the government there plans to plug the gap between supply and demand by turning to purified sea and wastewater. Our correspondent Adnan Chouachi reports.
During the summer season, Tunisians suffer from drinking water supply problems. The commissioning in 2018 of the water desalination plant in the island of Jerba was a relief for the population and tens of thousands of tourists. This modern unit includes the seawater intake and brine discharge systems, a plant to remove iron from well water, a drinking water pumping station, and the supply and installation of 23.7 kilometers of mains to connect with the existing water grid.
This seawater desalination plant serves the island of Jerba, around 175,000 residents in the whole region. The population's daily consumption of purified water is backed up by the desalination of deep groundwater aquifers, providing 20,000 cubic meters. This station provides 50,000 cubic meters. It can be extended to 75,000 cubic meters.
Many environmentalists say huge quantities of salt and sludge from desalination plants are deposited in the sea, leading to ecological changes in the Mediterranean. Tunisian engineers, however, believe the ecological impact is very limited because their plants are using modern desalination technologies.
The extracted salt is not dumped into the sea in one location. We use the diffusers to dump it in 2 different places and to mix the salt rapidly with seawater. Plants and animals do not feel any change in water salinity and are not impacted by this operation. Professional divers plunge to the sites to get samples. Our engineers are analyzing the water regularly.
The National Company of Water Exploitation and Distribution, SONET, aims to increase the number of deep groundwater desalination plants from 15 to 22. Tunisia's national water desalination strategy also aims to raise the number of seawater desalination plants from 1 to 6. The total desalination capacity will expand from 50,000 cubic meters to 725,000 cubic meters.
Now Tunisia's strategy is being implemented. There are currently 3 sites in progress in the cities of Zaraat in Gabes, Sfax and Sousse. They'll be operational in the next few months. The seawater desalination capacity will increase by 200,000 cubic meters per day to reach 250,000 cubic meters per day.
The construction of a water desalination plant in Sfax is financed by Japan. Japan is investing in 12 similar projects in the North African country, including the desalination plant in Zaraat, Gabes and Sousse. The German Development Bank is also involved in these projects, financing the delivery of desalinated water to many interior regions. Tunisia's first desalination plant was built in 1983. Today, the country's 16 desalination plants provide 6% of its fresh water supplies. Tunisia is now struggling through its 4th year of drought, and the new plants are meant to meet 30% of its water needs by 2030. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Lahore has topped the list of the world's most polluted cities for a 3rd day. The air quality has been categorized as hazardous as toxic smog in Gulf Pakistan's 2nd largest city. It was also visible in Karachi, which was ranked the 2nd most polluted in the world. The government says the pollution is caused by stubble on the fields being burnt in nearby India. The first ever transatlantic flight by a passenger plane powered entirely by so-called sustainable fuel is on its way from London to New York. The flight is being operated by Virgin Atlantic, and the fuel is mostly made from used cooking oil and waste animal fats. There are no paying passengers on board, but it's hoped this flight will showcase the potential of low-carbon options. Although critics say the environmental benefits are rather overstated. And finally, a Sumatran rhinoceros has been born in Indonesia, the 2nd birth this year of the critically endangered animal. The black baby rhino, the smallest and hairiest of the species, was a result of natural mating at the sanctuary in Waikambas National Park. The government estimates there are less than 80 Sumatran rhinos in the world, all of them in Indonesia. It's the only Asian rhino with 2 horns and can grow up to 1.5 meters tall, weighing up to 960 kilograms. Last month, a female calf was born at the same national park. The headlines again. Pressure grows to extend the pause in fighting between Israel and Hamas as 69 hostages and 150 Palestinians are released. And that is the world today. Thank you for watching. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.